I have tried and failed to get someone from the government or a friend to watch this video. I'm 61 years old and my mental acuity is failing. Further, there are some things like films of the German concentration camps that only a few people can stand to watch. And this is that sort of thing. There, I've already said a lot. So I don't have anything to gain or know what I have to gain from bothering to make this testimonial. And I probably have more to lose because of the sort of payback I've been threatened with. But there's certain things about um, the European experience in World War II, which is coming back at us now. I read the Pope saying that he believes World War III has started. I just believe the World War II has been reignited. There's a few things about the European experience that include hopeless testimonials. So some people get away, but other people just leave hopeless testimonials. And of course, a lot is lost. No one knows what became of those things. My testimony was intended to be designed as a curio from the Library of Alexandria to be lost, but it's a mission statement by the perpetrators. The Pope recently said something to the effect of "Don't be afraid to fight," or "Some people are afraid to fight." I thought it was a strange sentiment for him to be giving airplay to. I guess he's expecting there to be a fight because I wonder what he would have us fight about in Pittsburgh. People just fought because you didn't want to fight; they'd hit you. In Seattle, I mentioned that an elderly home for the uh, Chinatown International District community, Japanese community, was turned out into the streets. It was closed. I said hyperbolically the sort of thing that Tom called the Paris Commune sort of thing, pull out the Molotov cocktails about. Of course, I was just making a joke, but Jay Ansley's dacoit in the background immediately pricked up his ears. And so to defend the elderly is unheard of. And it's the same person who, when I mentioned the question of Greta Thunberg's timing of her celebrity to the COVID bomb, I said, makes me want to make sure she wasn't in on the COVID bomb. And I said, oh, or she was, her celebrity was timed to the appearance of the COVID bomb. And he said, cool. Like there was nothing wrong with that. It's not cool, but it's the sort of sentiment you would expect from a Jay Ansley dacoit. Um, so it's not cool to crack a joke about defending the old people, but it is cool to kick them off the planet. I'll remember that, Mr. Ansley. So after all, Kirk would, wouldn't he? Um, there's no mistaking from the poison in the mouth that they welcomed me back with, which is my mouth, something's wrong on the roof of my mouth. It's in addition to the gum infection. I'm hoping it's just a burn, but it's been about 5 days. I've been taking pictures of it. The complications, I'm liable to lose my teeth. These were people who I mentioned to James Lisa Court this happened. He said, well, you're always welcome to come here. In other words, um, you can kiss my ass, Craig, was the message. Well, it's clearly biological warfare. And you may have noticed we're getting monkeypox, listeria, children getting hepatitis. COVID, after AIDS, I get poisoned in the mouth. It's clearly biological warfare. And we don't have any SWAT teams going after the biolabs. Don't have any SWAT teams cracking down, just as Arredondo's gang stood and watched while the children were exterminated at Uvalde. After all, you have all day. We're going to get you, Curry, is the message. So I think part of this was Chomsky's idea. I grew up in a Jewish Holocaust survivor community, so I know that the idea of normalcy, as Truman called it, was alien to the Jewish Holocaust survivor community. They just hated that. They couldn't believe that people were sheltered and could move on or could talk of forgiveness. We should have watched those people more carefully, but instead we integrated their worldviews. And it became a question of, um, you know, making sure that nobody escapes unscathed, because why should they be allowed to? So that's all saying a lot. You wonder about the specifics of the situation. Sound Mental Health and the Decordery of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, claim that they operate in the spirit of transparency. I'll give you what text of what they consider transparency. Reagan's attorney, who had me in D.C. the day he claims he was shot, he worked at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, CROWD, who drew up the Constitution for the Reagan of the FMA, had this train wreck game in which there was a train wreck and you would hop around the room, and clear the tracks. Well, when I got to Tacoma, there was a porn store called Video Hop, and recently Hop Kendricks appeared down by the or someone who looked exactly like Hop Kendricks. And when I asked him, "Are you Hop? Hey, Hop," he said, "Yeah, that's me," and he trotted away. That's their idea of transparency, and it has to do with the pornographic videos they made on Mount Desert Island, just to get the matter straight. How gleeful their genocide pornography is. The Pants Gabriel, who helped them, has an album called Sunlinger by the Pound. Well, these Jews of Auschwitz came home disgruntled because of war movies, and they started selling Auschwitz by the pound. One of them had a store called Ben's, and he'd say, "Once yours," like so people were going through the piles of human hair and bracelets and so forth after the liberation of the camps. But selling Auschwitz is what the genocide pornographers do. And they claim they had to peep to get the psychological truth. There's a neurological warfare specialist using biological warfare from Israel. One of them's name is Wadmaker, and he's welcome. He's in the club at the University of Pittsburgh with Dr. Proctor, who wants to sacrifice a white. What they did was, after releasing AIDS, they got the Black Panthers together and said, "We can live with it, but we have to torture a white to death. We have to get to torture a white to death." And this was made a universal agreement. Nobody can talk them out of it. Wadmaker even said, "What I planned to do all along, you'll like this, fellas. We're going to cut off his head, put it into cryogenics to keep it alive in a Microsoft brainwave sonar, and have create a totalitarian hell prison to get revenge for Yoko Ono over Hiroshima." But they used John Lennon, that this is the will of John Lennon. They say nobody can talk about it. Jay Ansley and Mark Nordenberg just said, "Get them out of Pittsburgh to Seattle, and we'll take care of it out here, Mark." That's what Jay was pimping. So it must have been Chomsky's idea, because he's always saying you can come right out and tell people. They're not going to care. You don't like it, go to Putin then. Well, this is Putin. He's in on it. So they got this guy named Lester. They poison you in the mouth, and they got. I mean, you can check the, electronic records. Lester this, Lester that, Lester this, and then they Lester the dude with the Listerine. So, and you can't escape that, because they're going to get real with Agent Orange and stuff. And what they did was they built a neurological cyclotron. They blew up the neurological system, impacted and then they clocked it to rejection phobia. And it's like a Tumblr command, you must, or you'll suffer terrible pains. It's an implant. It's a neurological prompter. It's like, punch button and the robo human, it goes into seizures. So that's what they did. And, they, the neurological cyclotron subjected me to terrible suffering when I was being rejected by my fiance. And they said, "See, we have to peep." But the thing is they impinged the idea that the girl who was putting her vagina on my mouth and not making love to me for months, night after night, for hours, wanted some. I left it alone. I said, no, she was still a virgin after a year left. And they said he wanted some, so he must be a rapist. Now, obviously, they knew I wasn't a rapist. They knew the opposite was true, because they wouldn't have put that sweet, precious Rose in bed with me for their licky chops, who hop peep. If they thought they were giving a girl to a rapist, they wouldn't have done it. I mean, that would have been out of the question. Jay Inslee's not going to get on the witness stand and said, yes, I gave Rosa to a rapist so I could peep. So they knew that I wasn't a rapist, yet they claimed that they had genocide pornography going because they had to make sure he wasn't a rapist. Which one is it? You see, they can't reconcile those things. So they giggle and say, you're I, Claudius, and you're not like Anne Frank. Don't say you're like Anne Frank. Well, I was actually tortured as a gas in a place called Clean State by Launchman's and his friends for a Holocaust simulation experiment. The second Holocaust simulation experiment was up on Mount Desert Island. And so it was like Anne Frank. Which is it? Claudius and Anne Frank. And of course, putting me in the vat for the wad maker's idea. Suing Hiroshima to the max for the Japanese woman, and London is the vehicle for this, after torturing me in neurological cyclotron. And W, I come from W's father's ship in the Navy. My father was was on the same ship as Bush. So they're like, well, he says he stands on principle, and we can't have these cowards who won't fight, right? So they bring me to a war college, and Shifty and his friends put up this TV show about the Greeks where this guy he's not allowed to get out of fight, and they execute him. So, that's the game they're up to. But I'm not allowed firearms, you see. They want to get my goat. They torture me, and they ripper murdered somebody, but I'm not allowed to fight, so I can't stand up to the ripper murder. But I am allowed to make a threat that they can use to retroactively justify everything. So they were going to ripper murder somebody if I didn't threaten them. So I said I'd like to smash their glasses or something. And they came and arrested me. I spent Christmas. They said, see, that's why you don't get to go to school. I spent Christmas in the lockup. So, and then the later one of them goes, good game. Good game. They see it as a game, So you can shout, but don't threaten. You can cry. You're allowed to cry. Case dismissed, and they say, it's a question of endurance. Well, it's interesting. So many civilians are regarded as subhuman, and in this quasi-religious police state. Notice Windows has 4 windows. It's like the 4th dimension, right? And they impinge. That's what the idea of impingement means, comes from the 4th dimension. From the religious police state, they look at everything. They have all my house all hot wired up, and they watch. And the clubhouse and stuff. Because the punchline of the clubhouse, you've heard the old adage: keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. Ha 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 ha. After they chemically castrated me, poisoned my heart, and gave me diabetes, I went to court. And the court for the Mariners people who did this were all friendly, smiling. When it got dismissed without prejudice, they were boiling with evil. I didn't even know. I just heard dismissed. What's dismissed without prejudice? It means you could still reopen it. So they'll smile, but when they lose, they are evil people. And so that's what the clubhouse is doing, is keeping their enemies closer, keeping their project, their group project, as close as they can to watch. They were giving me a Tylenol, like the way Trumpy Tune was telling people to use bleach. And you have a question of administrative self-respect. There's a question of self-respect in this, because the administration supposedly has self-respect. The self-respect is totally for sale. It's totally a question of money. Man without money has no self-respect, they say back. Well, the idea of transparency is a forgery. They're not really transparent. What they're doing is rubbing my face in it and calling it transparency. But they're just like, they come in, give us your paintings, come in and clean the place, come in and help volunteer, come spend 2 hours and 3 hours in commute to get here and back. And then what do? They say, oh, time to go home, time's up, punch the clock and run away with the money. So, they had a box of broth. I remember Roth and Spomer, they shoved my hands in boiling water, but Jerry did, and said, no time, no time. Roth comes out of the refrigerator at this synagogue where Walt Nichols spends Friday nights. And there was a woman named Nava Edelstein, right? Who used to talk about bloody fights for one by two men for one job on an oil rig. She got by suing because she was a woman and then pretended to twist her ankle and made off with all kinds of unemployment money. She used to hang out with this Vietnam veteran named Skeeter, who had a cross between a husky and a timber wolf. I tied up the timber wolf for the husky for the timber wolf, and got a cross from them, and that's the pussy ball game. I remember when Yoko Ono ladled out the extra respect for the black man because he went along with this project in the form of Midori Goto from the Ouspensky's hallucinatron in the neurological cyclotron back in the days of the AIDS attack, when they said, well, we're going to get you with the poison in the mouth to make us feel better about AIDS. But when they were the ones who were behind AIDS, but don't say that because they get the Lenin hero as their justification. So it works in a really strange deviant circle. As I say, there's no SWAT teams going after the biolabs. There's no investigation. I can't get friends to look at it. I can't get government to look at it. And they say, well, go to Putin then if you don't like it. And so what we see in this is the idea that Lazarus is back. And in Franklin Graham's book, That Man Hitler was back from the dead. It made them weep with the power of Jesus, because you must forgive. And they're wondering, they're weighing, how much money is this impinged hallucination going to be worth to us? We're going to keep this enemy real, real close while we poison him and we'll lick each chops. Our genocide porno, that's proof that we were peeping somebody who would threaten us if we said it was the only way to save a bystander from being Ripper murdered. He would shake his fist and we could lock him up then on false charges. False charges are a problem when it comes to the University of Pittsburgh. They arrested me for trespassing after inviting me to an appointment, and then accused me of resisting arrest when I asked for the woman's name. I never did get her name. From how I gather, she never filed a complaint, even though they tortured me for years and lied to and about me, so I couldn't finish school. And if you look at you can't escape. They lure me to Seattle saying they're going to give me protection from abuse, and then they poison me in the mouth, say they're going to put me in a cyclotron. Well, Robin Lipscomb gave me a book of vampires 3-3, and it ends with the vampire first person being put into a tube like a monkey and shot into the sun on a rocket. So You know, we have a SCOTUS that says this is all for abortion and deserving. You know, basically through the code switching signal system. You know, COVID was abortion. You get the Clarence Thomas isn't going to have it. So if you look at the Odessa file, it starts with a man with his arm. He's got a woman and a half Nelson. He's saying how much money the films of the Kennedy assassination are going to be worth. It takes place in Odessa on 11/22, 1963 is when the film opens. And the rails go from Oswald to Ronald, you know, which have been pointing out for years as suspicious. And what they have in mind is writing a mental health version of Jimmy Curry's testimony. And these tapes are being secretly deployed for the analysis of his mental health disorder by the Krakatoa mob, the Warren Commission for VA veterans and post office surveillance of Kennedy freaks. And that's why they had to kill Susie and deliver a response to her mother with the report of two more Kennedys drowned in the lake because Hobbs can get his licky chops. He's going to get his licky chops. Don't play like I'm making a racist statement because this is Queen Elizabeth's time. She's the one saying that it never happened. They brutally tortured me. You would never hear somebody tell tall tales and fibs like those gangsters in King Crimson. Those people have the integrity of the NAACP absolutely in checkmate due to race because they can't see past their race about anything to the point where they would participate in disgusto act of the criminally insane and virtually put their licky chops invisible names on it, saying how interesting we get to mogul our mental health version